I'm going to read a story. This is my version of Hans Christian Andersen's Princess and the Pea, and I call my version Liliana and the Pea. Once upon a time, in a faraway kingdom, there lived a king, a queen, and their son, the prince. As the king and queen were aging, the royal family had hoped that their son would find a wife to help him in governing. As was the tradition in their family, many princesses and fine maidens from other lands were brought to the castle to meet the prince, but none had met the requirements necessary. The prince's bride must be proven to be compassionate, intelligent, humble, and able to lead. And she must also pass one other small test. One uncommonly stormy night, in the middle of crashes of thunder and flashes of lightning, the king heard a knock at the castle door. Upon opening, there stood a young woman, soaking wet from head to toe, shivering in the cold. "My dear, who are you? Do come in right away before you catch your death. What on earth are you doing out in this storm?" said the king. "Oh, thank you, Your Highness. I'm Liliana Porto. I was on a long journey and got caught in the storm. Might I stay with my horse in your stable until the storm passes?" "Nonsense!" exclaimed the king. "Your horse will stay in the stable, and you will stay right here in this castle. The storm will rage on for 12 days. And so it came to pass that Liliana stayed in the castle for 12 days. On those first 2 nights, as the royal family and their surprise guest shared meals and fine conversation, the king and queen became aware of how their son, the prince, looked in awe upon the maiden Liliana. Once alone, the queen said to her son, "Liam, you seem quite taken by our beautiful house guest." "Isn't she extraordinary, Mother? I've never met anyone who knows so much about plants and crops and soil and agriculture. And when she speaks of those, she makes the topic fascinating." "She is indeed remarkable," replied the queen. That night, the queen prepared a special room for Liliana. She piled 5 of the finest mattresses on the bed, and at the very bottom, she placed a tiny rock-hard pea. For this was the other small test. It was not enough to be compassionate or intelligent, humble, or able to lead. According to the royal family tradition, she must also be sensitive enough to feel a tiny pea hidden at the bottom of a pile of mattresses. The next morning at breakfast, the queen inquired of Liliana, "My dear, did you sleep well in your new room?" "Oh, yes, Your Highness," she replied. "Thank you for such a beautiful room and bed." A flicker of disappointment crossed the queen's face. It seems the lovely Liliana was not to be her son's bride. The next evening was a special event at the castle. Twice a year, the king, queen, and prince held a special dinner to give thanks to all those who worked in the castle. The king cooked a glorious meal, and the prince and queen served and entertained their staff. "This is a most wonderful tradition," Liliana exclaimed. "May I help with the meal?" And she and the king, with Liliana's tremendous knowledge of plants and vegetables, prepared a wonderful meal. Later in the evening, Prince Liam whispered to his mother, "Notice how Liliana is sitting with dear Bertha holding her hands. Dear Bertha is still so sad from the loss of her husband, and Liliana is listening to her story with so much kindness. Liliana even offered to come back and help her with her garden." "Yes," remarked the queen, "the dear girl is indeed a well of compassion." Several more days and nights passed, and the royal family, especially Liam, grew more and more fond of Liliana. But one morning, when she awoke, she saw the bright rays of sun streaming through her window. At breakfast, the queen asked, as she had each day, how Liliana had slept. And each day, Liliana had reported a perfect night's sleep. However, on this morning, she said to the family, "Liam, I cannot thank you and your family enough for allowing me to stay in shelter here. Your generosity and goodness is more than I could ever have hoped for. But the storm is past, and I must leave immediately and return to my home." Liam felt his heart fall to his feet. "Must you go, Liliana? There is so much more I hope to learn of you." "I really must. My village needs me. We have been working on new systems to improve our crops and water supply. There will be much work to do after this storm." "But surely they can spare one worker for a few more days. Can they not manage without you?" "Oh, I'm quite sure they can," said Liliana. "But this was my plan and my system that they worked to develop. I cannot be a captain who abandons ship." The king rumbled, "We have had so many wonderful conversations about the work in your village, Liliana. How did you never mention that you were the person to develop and lead those plans?" Liliana laughed. "I don't think boastfulness suits me well." "You're quite right," said the queen. "Your humility is most becoming." As Liliana packed her things to go, Liam sat down to speak to his parents. "She is so intelligent, so compassionate. She is humble and yet a leader. I cannot imagine a better partner to be with me in this life, to help me lead this kingdom. Am I too soon in sharing my feelings to her?" "But son," the queen said softly, "she did not pass the test. When I moved her to the new room, I placed the royal pea under a stack of fine mattresses, and as you have seen, she was not able to discern it." "Mother, she is my equal, nay, my superior in every way. Am I really to lose her on the say of a pea?" "The pea doesn't seem such a good idea, now does it? You'd better go and help her ready her horse." Liam stepped outside to find Liliana mounting her horse. As he came up, she said, "Oh, I almost forgot. This is for your mother." And she handed him a pot where a tiny growth of green had begun to sprout. "What is this?" he asked. "It's a very special plant from a very unusual seed. It only blooms once." "A seed? From where?" asked Liam. Liliana laughed. "A seed from my bed. The night your mother moved me to the beautiful room with the tall mattresses, I noticed something in my sleep. No matter which way I turned, I felt a hard and painful knot. I climbed down and felt each mattress until I discovered it. A tiny hard pea. Only on closer inspection, I realized it was not a pea at all. It was a very rare seed. So I asked dear Bertha for a pot and I planted it," she said. "It is a very beautiful and rare bloom. I do hope your mother will enjoy it." Liam laughed joyfully. "Liliana, you have no idea how very much." He held her hands and asked, "May I come to visit you? Might I learn to help you with your project?" "Of course," said Liliana excitedly. "We would be honored." And for several months, Prince Liam came to stay and work in Liliana's village, and Liliana came back to the castle for days each month to help dear Bertha with her garden. One day, back at home, Liliana sat with her father and said, "Father, Liam is the most wonderful partner. He is kind and compassionate, intelligent and humble. He will make a wonderful leader for this kingdom." "As will you, dear, as will you," her father replied. The end. Good night.